Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Stranger Side of Crazy. I'm Prometheus Silver, your host, and today joined with us is Storm Constantine. Hello, Storm. How you doing today?
Hi. Hello. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor. I promise I'll try not to act like make a fool of myself.
Okay.
So, how are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. Been working hard today on the new novel, which is nearly finished.
Nice.
I've been saying that every day for the past 3 months, by the way. So.
Yeah, I know that feeling. So, with that being said, when is it planned on coming out?
Well, it's going to be a real rush job with the production because I'm literally going to finish it this week. God's willing and fair winds and all the rest of it. But then it's going to go to my two editors and they'll edit it simultaneously and mark up the manuscripts, and I'll incorporate their edits into my main document. So it kind of saves a bit of time. But it's due out sort of around mid-December because we have our annual Imanian Press party in that month, and it's always good to have a new book out then if I can.
Cool. Very cool. So for everybody who doesn't know exactly who you are, you have been writing now for 30 plus years. You started your first book came out in 1987, the first book of the Wraeththu Chronicles. And, I have to ask, with the Wraeththu Chronicles, I can't even imagine in 1987. I read it probably in the beginning of 2000, and then I reread it again this year. And to me, it seems even groundbreaking nowadays. It seems like something you just don't see in fantasy. You dealt with concepts. You took. You kept the story in this fantastical world, but you still also incorporated real life problems, which I think is awesome. I think fantasy too much deals with, oh no, my house has been burned down by a dragon again.
Yeah. Let's get some elves to fix it. Yeah.
Exactly. So, and the coolest part about the Wraeththu series is you're still doing it. The book you were just talking about is the newest book in the Wraeththu Chronicles or series.
It is. Yeah.
So the biggest question I have about it, and I never ask this question because I know it's a stupid question to ask an author, but
okay, I'm really excited about this.
I know, but just because I think your work is so groundbreaking, was there any particular inspiration for the Wraeththu Chronicle?
Well, yes. I mean, it's weird because it's been with me all my life, and I think initially, and this is going to sound really mad, but it's only because I've talked about it so much with friends we came to this conclusion, is that my original influence was the original illustrations for The Jungle Book by Rudyard Kipling. When I was very young, the woodcut illustrations I had in it were these. Mowgli was presented as this sort of beautiful androgynous being with hair to his feet, and he was kind of draped over the first letters of sentences, like when they have those big sort of illuminated type letters, and it struck me something about those images. I don't know what it was, but it resonated. And then later on, when I got into studying sort of the occult and mythology and all that kind of stuff, I came across the idea of the sacred hermaphrodite, which also mixed in with my thoughts about these images I'd seen as a very young child, and it just kind of all grew from there, really. But I mean, it's been with me since forever, and I started writing about it in my very early teens, some really hideous poems and purple prose and stuff. But it's always been there. So I think it always will. It's just there for some reason.
So really, then this has been a 50-ish year-long project.
50-ish, yeah. Only-ish, yeah.
something along those lines. But so this is something you've even been working on in your teens, then?
Oh, hang on a minute. Just one second. I've just got to stop my computer doing something stupid. It better not cut me off, so I'm just warning you.
No worries.
Bloody Windows. Anyway, yeah, sorry, go on.
I know, right? No, I was just saying, so with all that being said, the Wraeththu Chronicles is about the race of people that come after humans. It's, about the end of our time, and about this androgynous race of people that, I guess in some ways you can say are better. Biologically speaking, they're far more advanced than us. They have much more akin to magical senses or magical sensitivity, if you want to put it that way. The question I have, though, now is with the gender explosion, I guess. I don't know exactly how to phrase it, but with the gender issues that have been coming up in the last few years, do you feel like the Wraeththu Chronicles are even more poignant and meaningful now?
I think it's interesting. It's really interesting because it's, in some ways, it almost feels like end time for humanity. I mean, I think we're living through a really stressful time in human civilization as it's known at the moment, and you can't help feeling that some horrible big change is coming. So it's weird because obviously when I was first writing the Wraeththu story seriously, professionally in the 80s, it's, it would have seemed crazy to think that it had any shred of reality in it, but now it's sort of, there's so many people who feel conflicted or different about their gender, and it's just almost prescient what I was writing about then. It's a bit freaky. I think that you could almost see it happening, hopefully not in the violent way it does in the books, but it's odd. Yeah, it's odd. It's a bit disorienting.
Okay. Because, it's interesting because whenever I've had a couple friends, my age who've had younger children, teenagers and things like that, and who have, either said that, they were gay or lesbian or something like that. And I'd say the two books you need to read are the Wraeththu books by Storm Constantine and The Well of Loneliness by Radcliffe Hall, which I'm not sure if you're familiar with that book.
Yes.
Yeah, which I thought was an incredible book. I read that also in my early 20s. A friend of mine had given it to me. But so I think your books really speak a lot on that front. And it's just really interesting now that things are changing in that direction. I mean, not necessarily a new race of people are coming, but people are, like you said, are conflicted. So,
but it's almost like, I mean, if we sort of try not to look at it as conflicted, it's almost like an opening up of the way people see themselves, I suppose. And although in the books, like I said, it's quite a violent transition because Wraeththu have to fight what's left of humanity and probably the worst aspects of humanity that's left. And they emerge from it quite damaged in a way, which I explored in later books about the legacy of being human. Whereas I think it's interesting that the younger generations of Wraeththu, what they call the second and third generations and beyond, the ones that are actually born from them rather than incepted from humans, it's almost, I see a parallel with the way that young people feel about older people nowadays, and the things that they feel angry about, like the climate stuff and environment, because it's their world. It's their world that they're going to inherit. And it's strange that the younger Wraeththu felt the same way when I was writing that, and I thought, this is weird, I'm a bit scared, I better not write anything horrible. But, you know what I mean, it's a bit worrying.
Yeah, please don't, for all of our sakes. No. But okay, cool. So, well, with that being said, I think every generation has their great conflict, and I think every generation has their reason to kind of look back on the past generations and kind of be like, you know, what were you guys thinking? What were you doing? Or a reason to be mad at them. So let's hope it doesn't explode like it did in the books.
Let's hope not. Or if it does beyond our time, anyway.
You're right. So also now besides Wraeththu, you've wrote a number of different series, fantasy and fiction, and you've also wrote a bunch of nonfiction books in the magical arena, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. I actually used one of your books, a book you wrote on the goddesses, for a little inspiration for one of my stories that had a goddess in it. What?
The one called She?
Yes, thank you. So now you started doing traditional publishing, and then in your later years, you moved on to self-publishing, or you've opened up your own publishing house, correct?
Yeah.
What was the driving force behind that?
Well, it initially started in 2003 because I was writing my second Wraeththu trilogy after having been away from that world for 15 years in a professional sense. And I wanted to get the first trilogy back into print. And though in America, Tor took it on sort of straight, well, it was still in print in America, and they took the second trilogy straight away. In the UK, I couldn't get a publisher to take the new trilogy at all, and they were just not interested in republishing the first books or anything like that. And it was at the advent of print-on-demand technology that was just starting to come in around about that time, where instead of costing tens of thousands of pounds to produce a book, you could literally do it for under £100. You didn't have to have warehouse space, because all the, as it's said by its name, print on demand, books are printed as they're demanded. So there's no wastage. It's better for the environment. You don't have to store books going yellow in your spare room. You don't get the distribution that a large publisher can give you. And also the books themselves individually per unit are much more expensive than something that gets printed in China for like half a cent each or whatever. So there are there are downsides to it, but the freedom was just amazing. So I brought out my new trilogy in the UK and brought out my previous books and all the back catalogue I had, because I had quite a lot of books out at that time, all of them out of print. Some of my friends, such as Frida Warrington, Brian Stableford, I republished some of their back catalogue. We had one of Mike Moorcock's. And other writers were saying to me, oh, you know, we want to bring our back catalogues out. And I think since those times, some of them have gone on to create their own presses to do that themselves. But it was just revolutionary. It was amazing. And what, excuse me, I've got a frog in my throat. But since those times, I just found that the freedom was so intoxicating. I couldn't go back to working with big publishers. And when the time came to sell new work, I thought, do I really want to do all this? Do I want to have all the horror of dealing with people who don't give a damn about me? At least with me, if I'm my own boss, I won't ignore my own phone calls. I won't ignore my own emails. And I just felt having that control was just amazing. You know, I couldn't go back now. I just couldn't.
Okay. So do you think in 1987, when you published your first book, do you think if you had the possibility, would you have self-published?
I don't know about that, because to be honest, the 20 odd years I did work with big publishers, I suppose, you know, I got my name known in the field, which was down to promotion, which I probably wouldn't have had if I'd started from scratch on my own. I got to know a lot of other writers and editors and agents and all the people involved in book production. So I think that was important. So I don't know whether it would have been easy to start from scratch, to be honest.
It's not. You have to, all those things that you just mentioned, you do your own, you know, the publishing aspect of it, the editing, well, the editing you have to hire out, but, you know, cover art, the marketing is by far the hardest part.
Yeah, but I learned a lot from my editors. I mean, you know, I had some amazing editors, and they taught me so much about my craft that improved my writing, and I wouldn't have had that either. So,
yeah. No, I agree. The couple editors that I've worked with, if you have a good editor, they make you better. they make you a better
Indeed.
writer.
Mm.
So cool. So also in 1987, the social media explosion hadn't happened.
No. No, I mean, there was no access to anything like that. So again, that would have been so much harder to get your work known in those days. You just
Yeah.
wouldn't have been able to do it in the same way at all.
Well, how do you feel about social media now? Do you feel like it's kind of
What you mean, other than it being a toxic cesspit?
yes,
I don't
but
know.
unfortunately,
I mean, I use it for business, and it's nice to be able to keep in touch with people who otherwise you might not see very often. But I really don't like a lot about it. I don't like the pitchfork kind of wielding mob mentality that seems to be on it, and I don't know. It's not for me really. I just keep my head down. I put little photographs of my cats on Instagram. That's about it, you know.
well, I don't mean necessarily from a personal point of view, but from a business point of view. Do you find it helpful at all?
Oh,
Or-
very, yeah, very helpful. Yeah.
Cool. So, who are some of the best authors you think you've worked with over the years, or some of the most funnest?
What that I've published or that I've actually worked with.
I'm sorry, what?
You mean people I've published or people I've actually written books with?
Either or.
Well, Tanith Lee, obviously, she was my great love as a writer as I was growing up, and you know, I fortunately eventually got to meet her and become a friend, and then I became a publisher. So that was amazing. She's always been a huge influence on me. Sadly, now dead, of course, no longer with us. But so her, other people. I mean, I've got a lot of favourite writers, not necessarily people I've worked with. I mean, one of Tanith's influence, Jane Gaskell. I think she was really influential on me as well. So, I mean, I've enjoyed working with most of the people I work with now. I've got a fabulous bunch of authors in Imanian Press and Megalithica Books. They're really nice people. I get on with them. They're fun to work with. So, all of them, really.
Well, you're the boss, so hopefully you hire the right people.
Well, yeah, I'm picky.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Cool. And one of my other personal favorites was Michael Moorcock, who you wrote a book with, or I know we talked about this. You wrote a book for, or how did that exactly work?
Well, he had a book that he was supposed to be writing. I think he'd actually been commissioned to do it, and he didn't have time to do it. I think he was trying to get one of his books filmed at the time or sell the rights or something. And he just asked me if I'd help complete it. And then when he sent me the stuff, it's actually just like a massive pile of notes and pictures that he'd drawn, and it was like a huge mound of stuff. And I kind of had to turn it into a novel. So yeah, it was fun. It was really fun.
Nice. Yeah, that obviously I don't know him, but that seems kind of his how he'd be. He seems kind of like a mad writer. I think I read one place, one of his Sundered World, he like wrote in 48 hours, and it was and it was like, you know, a 200-page story, and I'm just like, how? What did you do? You know, but some people could do that, I guess, so that's cool.
I think some writers are very lucky. I mean, Tanith used to just channel her writing. She could just sit down and write and not have to worry about ideas or have self-doubt. She just did it. And I think Mike's probably similar. You know, some people are just lucky enough to be able to just sit down, turn it on, and then, oh, time to have dinner, turn it off. I think.
Yeah.
I don't know, but it's a gift, that is.
Fair enough. So now in the 30 plus years that you've been writing professionally, what do you think's been the greatest challenge to you as a writer?
Probably dealing with the industry. Also, I I got a lot of criticism over the first Wraeththu books, as you can imagine. I got it from several different quarters. You know, people saying it was anti-women, which it really wasn't. It wasn't anti-man either. They didn't get it. You know, they didn't get that these individuals in the books were both. They couldn't get that. You know, so they put their own ideas of what they thought they were, which was wrong. So it was difficult dealing with some of the criticism, and also with the indifference of the publishing industry, because every writer must feel that their works are a part of them, like children almost, and to have them treated badly or not be taken seriously is very hard sometimes.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, and I could definitely see in the 80s, the late 80s, it not getting a lot of good press. But it survived. And you in the 30 years that you've done the Wraeththu now, you put out more short stories in it, and you also allow fan fiction.
Well, I wouldn't call it fun fiction. It came from fun fiction.
Okay.
Basically, I picked up quite a lot of people who like writing fun fiction because Anne Rice. Oh God, I'm so sorry about my voice. It's not good today.
Do you want to get a drink real quick?
I haven't got anything here. Can I quickly go and get something?
Yeah, I'll pause it real quick.
Okay.
We took a quick break, but we were talking about the different work that people were doing. Started as fan fiction in the Wraeththu world.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, basically somebody wrote to me, one of the fan fiction writers that was writing vampire stuff based on Anne Rice's work, and Anne Rice, for some quite legitimate reasons, actually came down hard on fan fiction. Something happened, which I won't go into. People can find that out if they want to, and felt that she didn't want to have people writing about her characters anymore. And they found out, some of them found out about my work, and they were quite into the characters, and it's sort of similar sort of thing, I suppose, in some respects. And they really got into writing fan fiction about it, and some of them were very good. And to cut a long story short, eventually I started producing called the Para Anthologies, which was, they're about biannual, every couple of years, stories written by other writers, and I'll always put a couple of stories in myself, just Wraeththu anthologies. And some of them have written novels as well, and I call them shared world writers now rather than fan fiction, because they're professional writers. Some of them are writers anyway, they're producing their own novels separate to Wraeththu being published. They're not just fan fiction writers, they are legitimate professional writers. So it seems a bit disrespectful to call them fan fiction. They're shared world writers in that respect, but they have their own careers outside of that as well.
Okay, cool. So they're just other writers then who've come together and to put an anthology together, who just really like your work and want to do something in it.
Yeah, that's it. And initially it was a kind of thank you, because after the first Wraeththu anthology, the Wraeththu trilogy, I mean, the world wasn't quite sure what to do with it, I don't think, because it fell between so many stools, it was ridiculous. And my publishers said to me, you should write outside of it, don't do any more Wraeththu, which to me was gutting, because obviously I'd done it all my life. And so I had to write some other novels, some of which were quite angry, really. And it wasn't until 15 years later that I wrote professionally again about Wraeththu. And during that time, the fans had kept it alive with chat rooms and, fan fiction sites. And it was them. It was all there waiting for me. When I came back and sort of said, I'm going to do a new trilogy, there were all these people waiting for it. And, I was so grateful for that. And so part of starting the Para Anthologies and doing the shared world novels was because I was trying to say thank you to these people, really, and getting them published. So it's that. So we've had a very sort of close relationship, really. It's cool.
That's awesome. I think that's probably one of the greatest maybe achievements as a writer, or not, or good feelings you could probably get, is like when somebody comes to you and be like, I want to write in your world, or I'd love to write a story, about your characters or something like that. I could imagine that's probably an incredible feeling.
Yeah, it is. You just think, oh, they're going to come and play in my garden with me today. It's good.
Nice. So also now back to the industry, what in the 30 plus years now, what do you think's been the biggest change? And has there been a lot of change, really, or?
Yeah. I mean, not having worked with a big publisher for a long time, I can't say for certain how it is for authors with them now. But I mean, the internet and ebook technology has obviously had a dramatic effect on everything. I think ebooks, again, have given authors a voice and made it a little bit easier to be published. They can do it themselves, and Amazon, much as they might be seen as evil overlords, do actually do quite a lot to help unpublished writers. So there's that. I think it's a lot easier for people to get their work now to a public. The downside of it is that's not always terribly well edited, and I think I wish that more writers in that position would actually pay to get their work edited, because that's a big letdown often. So that's really changed. It's just, I think it's the whole world of literature has opened up massively, and it's easier for people to write and to have people read their work. That's the biggest thing.
Yeah. With that being said too, is it's also flooded the market, so to speak.
With aforementioned not edited very well, and that is like the politest way I can put it.
Yeah, it happens. So, all right. So, cool. So you wanted to do a reading from?
I can do. I hope my voice doesn't go croaky again.
Well, you can hope not.
I'll have to get my seeing trumpets again. Where are they? Here they are. There we go.
Oh my
seeing
gosh.
trumpets on.
I don't know
Okay,
why.
I'm going to read a little bit from the first Wraeththu book, which is basically the character talking about people hearing for the first time about Wraeththu in the world. Okay.
Okay, and now is this Pelez or Cal speaking?
Pelaz, yeah, this is Pelaz. It was told in his voice, the first one. One thing I just need to mention before we get into the reading is the whole thorny issue of pronouns, okay? Because when I was first writing Wraeththu, when I was very, very young, I really didn't understand about anything like that, and I felt that the male pronoun was less gender specific than she, which is why I chose to use it. And it kind of, because I'd written it like that all the time, it just seemed to me it would be clunky and contrived to go back and retrofit everything. So I always ask readers to read the pronoun as being gender neutral, even though it isn't. So anyway, right, we ready?
Ready.
We first heard of what were timidly termed the Troubles by travellers passing hurriedly through our territory. Nobody liked to linger in this part of the country because there wasn't anything to stay for, but my family were an affable, hospitable crowd, and their hospitality was difficult to evade. They loved visitors and entertained them as lavishly as they could, usually under forced conditions, but it took a hard brute indeed to resist their advances. My father especially liked to hear news from the world outside, because it was generally always bad news, which made his own life seem better. We didn't have television where we lived, and people rarely made the long journey to the nearest town that sold newspapers. Sefton Richards had deliveries of supplies made to us. Perhaps he wanted to keep us ignorant, his peasant workers. And the strange thing was, we didn't question it. With hindsight, I think we were wise not to care, but eventually, even that could not protect us. So, word of mouth was the only way we got to hear anything, to which we looked forward with ghoulish glee. Disasters were sure to bring a smile to my father's face. They were never tragic to him, because he didn't know any of the people who had suffered. They were just characters out of stories, and not even the most accomplished tale spinner can really taint the air with the stink of blood and burning. There were always troubles, and each news item that reached our isolated corner of the world was more terrible and incredible than the last. Plagues, catastrophes, rampant crime, poverty, starvation, violence, war, corruption, religious mania, we heard them all. It never seemed real to me, because my life was so small and simple. It might have lacked luxuries, but it also lacked the other, less enjoyable accoutrements of a supposedly more civilized existence. Crime was virtually unknown to us, so when we heard about it, it was like hearing stories of the ancient gods or something, horror tales that happened outside the reality of normal day-to-day life. These new troubles had started in the north some years before, although no one seemed sure of exactly when. Different visitors have offered different reasons for its cause. Some favoured the spectre of unemployment and its attendant poverty. Others waved the flag of continuing moral decline, while yet more claimed that power plants were responsible by insinuating noxious fumes into the air that warped the mind. The world we know is disappearing, they ranted. Not the final sudden death we all envisaged, but a slow sinking to nothing. Heads would be shaken, sighs expressed. You are lucky here. Savour it, and pray to the gods it lasts, that the horrors never reach you. Squatting in the dirt outside our house, I felt they never would. I listened to the tales with the same grisly pleasure with which I had listened to my grandmother's stories of the werewolves that stalked the desert. So, what was so terrible and abominable that all other abominations were insignificant before it? Gigantic explosions, or half the world sliding into the sea? No. In a way, it was smaller than that, which is perhaps why it grew to have such strength. It had a name, Wraeththu, the ghost of a word that you could whisper in the dark or use as a curse. Wraeththu, die. It was a soft word, full of hidden power, but no one knew its meaning. Wraeththu were people, individuals who called themselves that, but it was also a movement, a youth cult. Right, do you want me to go on, or shall I stop there?
I think that's actually the perfect spot to end it.
Okay.
Cool.
So that's a little bit background. That's Palad's first hearing about these creatures, who of course eventually find him and whisk him away to a life of transformation and so on. So anyway.
Well, I think that's one of the coolest things too that you did, well, with that book in particular, is you really built up the mystery behind it. And even after Pelez goes away, it's still not even, a couple more chapters until you even realize, like, you actually get the answers of what's going on. You throw people into this mystery, and it's like you just tease them with stuff like that. Like, okay, it's a youth cult, it's a movement. So what's going on? But you come to find out later on that
they always take their dead with them. You see.
Yes,
so it's not found out for a while.
Yeah, so you find out later on that it's obviously so much more than just a movement or a youth cult. It was very cool, a very good way to keep, well, at least me reading. So, all right, cool. Well, one more final question, I guess, before we get into the lightning round.
Mm-hmm.
Authors nowadays, do you have anything to say for aspiring authors?
Yes. First of all, and I think this is something that quite a few writers have said, but I've always said it and thought it, so I haven't copied anybody else, is that the first book that you write should be the one you've always wanted to read and have never found. Okay. Which is certainly the case for me, because if you write that book or try to write that book, you will do so with passion and with heart. And if you love it, then there's a damn sight more chance other people will as well. I know some people just want to write for money because they see it as a way to sort of make money. But I'm talking about people who have writing in their blood and would do it regardless of whether they got published or not. And that is my main advice. That's the first thing. Write the book that you've always wanted to read. And the second thing is get edited and work with other writers or friends who are literate and just get people to give you input on your style and your narrative structure, how you put things together, everything. And also learn the tools of your trade, which is grammar, syntax, punctuation, how to write good dialogue, how to create good characters. There's a lot of learning. You can't just sit down and do it. You have to sort of be aware of the rules before you can break them. That's about it.
Fair enough. And you actually you raised another question that I wanted to ask, and I had forgotten about until you said it. Wraeththu was your debut album.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as I'm tracking, it's your biggest. It's what you're known for.
Mm.
Is that a little weird for you? Because I mean, that to me, that I can't think of really another occasion where that really happens. Usually an author doesn't become, famous until their third or fourth book, or maybe even later on. And, you come out of the gate, and it may take in a few years, but that seems to be like you. Do you know what I mean?
Mm. I mean, I have done a lot of other stuff. I mean, my novel Hermitet was very well received, and I've done Burying the Shadows, Sound for the Sacred, Kalincher. I've done a series of books, the Grigori trilogy, which is based on all the fallen angels and the Nephilim mythology. So, and another trilogy called the Magravandius trilogy, which is an epic fantasy. So I've done quite a lot of other stuff as well, but the Wraeththu just stuck around. I mean, mainly because of other people's interest in them, and they like reading about them, I suppose, and I love writing about them. So, and because now, I'm getting to the age where you don't really know how much time you've got left. I just think I've got to get all my stories out. If I want to write just Wraeththu, I will, because you don't know how long you've got. So it's
Okay. I wasn't suggesting you don't have other good books out there. It's just.
no, I'm just saying because so people know.
Yeah. No, I know. And that was, we talked about that one time when we did our little test run. We talked about Stalking Tender Prey. And you also had, forgive me, I read this one in my 20s too, so I can't remember the name, but Sea Dragon Air, or?
Yeah, that's the Magravandius Chronicles, yeah.
Yeah. Yep. So, no, I know. I'm familiar with the rest of your work. And I do plan on putting links to some of your different pages in your publishing house and stuff like that, so people can find you. So who may not have heard of you, or looking to pick up more work. So, okay. So, are you ready for the lightning round?
Okay.
Okay. Don't be nervous. You look. So how it basically works is, the lightning round is 5 questions that have nothing to do with anything, and if your answer is correct or not is completely subjective on how I feel at the moment.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, it's fun. Okay, so hold on one second. I just lost my questions. There we go. Okay, I'll start you off easy.
Mm-hmm.
So I know you've done also a lot of, or you've done some managing for bands and stuff like that. But you're also from the home of some of the greatest bands, at least in the last 50 years. So if you had to choose for the rest of your life to listen to one band between The Who, Led Zeppelin, or Pink Floyd, who would it be?
Led Zeppelin, probably.
Okay, cool. There was actually, all of them were a right answer. I love them all, so
Okay.
you're not wrong there. But
I like bits of The Who and Pink Floyd, but not all of their stuff. I think if I just had to listen to one band, it's best to choose the one you like most of the stuff of. Okay.
yeah, they're all great bands, but yeah, definitely had their own arenas that they dealt with. The Who was definitely a lot more social. Pink Floyd was, I don't even know. I mean, internal, the mind kind of, and Led Zeppelin kind of delved into the fantasy aspect. So, okay, so 1 for 0. If for 1 year you had to be one member of the Spice Girls, who would it be?
Oh, no. Okay. I presume I'm dead when this happens, and I've been a bad girl all my life, right?
Yes, this is.
Oh, dear God.
I knew this question would get that response, and that's why
I don't like any of them. Please don't make me.
You have to just pick one.
Oh, my God. I suppose Emma Bunton, because she's the least offensive, but she's the most boring. Oh, I don't know, but the others have just had train wrecks of lives, and I just no. And maybe actually no, Sporty's not too bad, is she? She's quite respectable. Yeah, probably her because she's a bit more interesting.
Okay, so sporting spice. All right, cool. So 2 for 0. Okay, so I'm guessing you know about. Actually, you may not because you're not big on social media. But do you know about this whole Area 51 craze? But
yes, I did read something. I'm not sure what it is, but I did see something.
So pretty much it started that somewhere, or somebody decided that we should raid Area 51.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Yeah. So with that being said, do you believe in aliens? And would you be on that bandwagon?
I don't believe in aliens how people believe. I think it's a great long answer I'd have to give. I think something's going on, but I think it's the same phenomenon that when people were taken under the hill by fairies centuries ago, I think people getting abducted by aliens is an update of the same phenomena, which I think is something, I don't even know what it is, but there's something going on. I mean, all the Skinwalker Ranch stuff and the Appalachian Mountains and all their weirdness and everything. I think, there's something going on, but I don't think it's necessarily people in nuts and bolts spacecraft coming along and doing stuff. I think it's sort of more, I don't know, how something affects our minds in a way, and I don't even know what it is. So, environmental, maybe.
Maybe. So, but in general, you don't believe in aliens?
Not little grey men in that way. I believe in aliens, but not that.
Okay.
I think I believe in things. Okay.
Okay.
But I need evidence.
So you do believe that somewhere in the universe there is some sort of life?
I certainly think there are other sentient races in the universe. How could there not be? It's just so massive. That would just be really silly. I think people that say there could not be life elsewhere are just daft. I think that's just totally
daft. Say bullocks. Say bullocks.
What?
Bullocks or bollocks, or how do you say it?
Bollocks.
Bollocks. Oh, I always love that word.
Sorry, I thought it was some. I was like, what question is that? Bollocks. Yeah.
Yeah. We don't say that here, but we should. That's a great word. Okay, so you get all the music questions today. And something tells me that you were a bit of a punk rocker back in the day.
Yeah, I was.
Okay. Complete this line.
Oh no, this is going to be a lyric I won't remember, isn't it?
Well, we'll see. God Save the Queen.
It's a fascist regime.
Oh, okay, there you go. For those who don't know, Sex Pistols song "God Save the Queen." There you go. Wow, you're 4 for 4 so far. The last and final question. Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. If I should ever find myself in England, would I be invited over for a spot of tea?
Yes, you could have a spot of tea, or you could have a spot of gin, or we could even stretch to a Chinese takeaway or an Indian takeaway if you're so interested in such things.
I do like Indian food. It is actually really good. It's something I've delved into the last few years.
We've actually got a very, 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 very good Nepalese restaurant in our town as well, which is very good.
Cool. Well, obviously that was the correct answer. So you're 5 for 5. Thank you so much for being on here and humoring me. Is there anything that we missed that you may want to say or talk about?
Not really, no, other than the new book's coming out in December. It's called Breathe My Shadow. I'm currently working on the next volume of the She Project, which is he, because the first one was about dark goddesses, and I'm going into the sort of the gods of nature and so on, like more, I don't know, if you say dark gods, it's going to give the wrong impressions, and I haven't got time to explain it, but the more interesting, mysterious of the male god forms. And then the third volume of that will be they, which is going to be the androgynous ones, of which are an awful lot in the world. So I'll be working on that as well. I'm also going to be working on the next 2 volumes of my Egyptian magic books, which that's a little series as well, but I don't know, I'll probably work on that next year. So there's a lot in the pipeline.
Okay, cool. And people will be able to find out all the information about this at your publishing house website?
Yes, and we've got a Facebook page, Emmanuel Press, just on there, and we've got an Instagram account where my colleague Danny, who's our art director and main artist, she posts all the stuff on Instagram. She's a bit more social media savvy than I am, so there's
Nice.
stuff on there. All the book covers go on there and news about releases and stuff. So
Cool.
you just get pictures of cats from me.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you being on here, and happy holidays. Happy.
Okay, if you give me a link that I can put on my Facebook page and also on my blog and the Imanium page, I can get people to come to your site if you just let me have the info.
Oh, sure.
Send me an email.
Definitely, I will. Probably I'll either edit it tonight or tomorrow, and it'll be out then.
Okay, lovely. Well, thanks ever so much, Prometheus. I do appreciate your support.
Oh,
and,
no problem.
Talking about my work with me. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. It's been an honor.
Right, and now I've got to do a spring equinox ritual, autumn equinox ritual rather, in the pouring rain, which will be fun. But anyway, I've got to meet my friends shortly, so I better go. But happy equinox to you too. So.
Thank you. You have a great night.
Okay, thanks. Bye.
Bye.